So welcome to the Node.js Community Technical Steering Community Meeting for October 23rd, 2019. We'll be following the agenda that was posted in issue 768 in the TSC repo. So to start out with, are there any announcements that people would like to share? If nobody else has any announcements, I guess the one thing I will add is just a reminder to people that the submissions for the Collaborator Summit and the Community Corner at Node+JS Interactive are open. So just a reminder to submit any issues there, and we're looking forward to see you there. Moving on to the next thing on the agenda is the CPC and board meeting updates. In terms of the board side of things, the meeting is this week. I've checked the board, and as of yesterday at least, there didn't seem to be anything to be taken or brought up with the board. So if there is something you'd like to add, just let me know. Matteo, do you want to do the CPC update?
Sorry, I'm a little bit in another environment. Yeah, no, all things CPC related fine. There's a lot of attention to how the onboarding process is going to happen, both for new projects that are coming in, a lot of questions, a lot of things that the CPC is working on, and both for new projects, but as well as old projects. So one of the important things is that we are asked to complete a checklist to be fully onboarded with the transition to the OpenJS Foundation. There is a certain things that are already being done, but other things that we probably need to do, and we need to discuss and talk about. A couple of things to be changed related to code of conduct, the DCO, and some other things that I'll track down and chase everybody, essentially. Probably both me and Joe at this longer conversation to add. I don't know. Michael, have you got anything to add?
I know. I think that's good. As you said, the focus is on working through the applications, the process, and then onboarding, including the existing projects. So I took the minutes I said is, that you and Joe will be leading that effort and letting people know what needs to be done. Okay, so
essentially, yes.
Okay, sounds good. So let's move on then to the next thing on the agenda, which was modules working group Q&A. So Miles, do you want to give an introduction on that front?
Yeah, sure. So we all chatted about modules last week. Specifically, we were talking about some of the things we're still trying to reach consensus on, specifically dual specifier hazard. We had only about 10 minutes last week, and that was kind of enough time to, get people curious, but not enough time to really get them up to date. So between then and now, the modules team put together an explainer doc to share with the TSC, giving kind of like a high-level update of where we're at right now, what the current feature set of the implementation is, what decisions still need to be made, and as much as we could, kind of the implications of those decisions. We have a couple members of the team on the call right now, including TSC and non-TSC members. So there's myself. From the TSC, there's myself, Matteo, and Michael Zasso. Non-TSC members who are on the call right now include Geoffrey Booth and Jan Krems. So I'm not sure if everyone from the TSC has had time to review that doc, but we wanted to make kind of an open floor for TSC members to ask any other clarifying questions they might have, with now having maybe a little bit more context. Not all at once, everyone, please.
I guess I'd ask how many people have had a chance to read the explainer doc? Where was it? To be honest, I'm going to say I must have missed it, either in the flood of issues or if you sent it out in an email. How was it shared?
It was sent out in an email to the TSC list on Monday. Okay. I just dropped it into. Oh no, I think I just copied the actual. Never mind. That's the meeting notes. There, the doc I just put now is the explainer doc.
Okay.
So it seems to me then that we are not in a position to really hold this conversation right now. I think the next thing that we can do then is to kick this back to the module team. We have a meeting this afternoon at 3. We'll continue to work on trying to get towards consensus on what we're working on. I think that at the very least, the exercise of summarizing all of this and trying to explain it to y'all, that's helped us work some stuff out. So we'll kick it back to the modules team. We'll work on our thing, and then we'll come back to the TSC if we need any more feedback. But in general, please, I'd really appreciate it if folks could review that explainer doc and come to us with any questions that they might have.
Right. I think an option would also be to see if we want to put it on the agenda for next week. I don't know what people think.
I guess just my concern would be, and folks, please tell me if I'm incorrect here, is we talked about doing this last week. We sent out the doc on Monday. People aren't super engaged, and we have some folks who showed up. So I'd prefer to not repeat that unless people are explicitly we really want to talk about it. Because because I think it's a very reasonable response is, hey, modules team, you're the experts on this and we trust you to make a good decision, which is kind of the impression I'm getting a little bit through the silence.
I think that's kind of our default. Tobias had one quick question, which was this is about the divergent specifier, not about the package resolver.
What about the package resolver?
The package root resolver. I guess, Tobias, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, we had a separate issue. I think we discussed it last week, or at least mentioned it, about a root namespace for packages. So using a special symbol. That's not related, right?
Yeah, I think the team, for the most part, is moving forward, potentially with trying to do self-reference. So you would just use the name of the package that you're in to reference to itself. But I think we got enough feedback to kind of move forward on that. This is more about the divergent specifier hazard. Okay. Geoffrey, you have your hand up. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we had the modules meeting later today in 3.5 hours. So maybe if any TSC members want to engage about this and can read that doc in the next 3 hours, maybe they can just join our meeting.
I haven't read whatever updated documentation there is on this issue, but this issue is way too complicated. I don't know, it'd be much more I think reasonable to have people who are not fully engaged review something where it's okay, if you look at this package that does X and the other package does the other behavior, and which of these things is what we want to be correct, because understanding it purely from unfortunately understanding how those details work is enormously complicated and unreasonably so. Unless you're very involved, it's very difficult to understand what the thing is and what that's actually going to impact. I know this is not really the fault of the modules team, but yeah.
Yeah, I also think, for what it's worth, that between the last meeting and now and other conversations that have happened, I think we're actually getting, as a team, really close to a solution that finds a balance between developer experience, edge cases, and documentation. So genuinely, I think that like if the response that we're getting from the TSC right now is, you know, not jumping at having an opinion because of the depth and like how much onboarding there is to do from getting to know what's going on, I think that we may be able to actually even reach some level of consensus in the next week within the modules team anyways. So let's just kick it back to the modules team. If anyone from the TSC has questions or concerns, please, you know, reach out, open issues, let me know, or let other modules teams members know. And if we're still unable to reach consensus, we'll come back to the TSC once again to see if, you know, anyone's had time to ramp up. Does that seem reasonable to folks?
Yes.
It does. I actually have one question. I mean, if I understand this, do I understand this correctly? The problem here is that when you call require for a CommonJS module, it's effectively a singleton, the module that you're getting. So different JavaScript files calling require get the same singleton, but that with import and require, you can actually get a different underlying object with your require and with an import. Is that?
Yes, that is, and basically the question is whether or not we should enable that behavior, because this would be the only way to have packages that can be both required and imported. So we either need to support the developer experience where package authors can publish a package that can be both required and imported with full support for both interfaces, or alternatively, we need to have separate entry points for CommonJS and ESM. Now, we do support CommonJS in the ESM loader, so if you publish a CommonJS package, you will be able to require it and import it. You just won't be able to do named exports. So you won't be able to do kind of like destructuring or the named imports the way that you would with an ESM module. It's not the best from a developer experience, but it kind of works. But the flip side would be if a package has its main or its export.set as an ESM entry point, there's no way to require it. To enable that, we can do it. And we have a proposal that would be able to do this, but it would introduce a hazard whereby if at different parts in the graph, the same module is imported and required, you would get two separate singletons. And it would be on the package author to ensure that they have designed the package in such a way to avoid the hazard.
Right. I actually do have an opinion about that. I think so even with CommonJS, the singleton assumption is very hazardous and does get broken. I mean, it is true that if you require the same package, it is a singleton. But what's not true is that a particular string foobar will always be the same package foobar, because you can have nested modules. So I've definitely seen people get into head-scratching scenarios where they're like, but it's always a singleton. It's like, yeah, you've got version 1.1 and that one's version 1.2. So code relying on singleton behavior is inherently a minefield. I don't know if that.
Yeah, well, the other one aside from singletons is also instance of checks. Jan, you have your hand up?
Which is effectively
That has the same problems.
Yeah, same problems. Those instance of checks are super touchy across modules.
Yeah, I agree that this is not a new problem in general. Like, yes, that exists in the ecosystem. That, for example, GraphQL or React, if you have two copies of it in your graph and two different libraries are using the two different copies, things break. The new thing is that all the ecosystem practices around monitoring npm-ls and making sure that you don't have two copies, and as long as everyone's using the same major version, everything's fine, that no longer applies here, because you can have the same major version, but then two different packages required in different ways, or one requires this, one imports it, and suddenly that problem is back, and you can no longer, as the only way that you can then manage it as a application owner is to make sure that you only use libraries that require or only use libraries that import, but never mix the two, which means that it is very hard for any library to add import support, because the moment they do it, nobody can use them that still uses libraries that use require. So you need to shift the entire ecosystem of GraphQL or the entire ecosystem of React at once to the different module format. Now, that is the same as a complete major version change, but it means that it's not only some API is deprecated, it's you have to change the way that the entire code is written and ported from require to ESM, which is a much bigger change, even for a major version.
And you don't necessarily control all uses of a module. I mean, so what is the debate in the module group? So again, trying to wrap my head around this, it sounds like it basically boils down to some people it's so important and so useful to be able to require an ES6 module that people really want that feature, but some people are so concerned about the divergent singleton and the breaking of instance of checks that they're just not ready to allow that as a feature or to unflag it as a feature. Is that basically the debate?
It's specifically about allowing 2 entry points in a package JSON so that you can specify different entry points for the different loaders. That is the feature that's being debated. The semantics of it, we have some different semantics of how to do it. And like the primary reason to allow it would be from like an upgrade path and like module author standpoint. So I'm a module author. I have a module that's written using CommonJS, and I want to offer an ESM entry point. And I want people to be able to continue to require my package and import it. I don't want to have to make a semver major change that changes it to ES6 and then drop support for CommonJS, or force CommonJS users to use an alternate specifier in order to access a compatible version of the package. So the big part of it is, trying to make it so that module authors can transition the way in which their packages are authored in a way that would be transparent to the consumers of those packages. And enabling that developer experience is what creates this new version of the hazard, and I am one of the people who has been, against introducing the new hazard, although to be honest, I am currently rethinking my position based on the developer experience that's being unlocked by the conditional exports proposal. So I'm still doing some more research and thoughts. But with how much I've seen the existing hazards kind of break people in all sorts of unexpected ways and break expectations, I was very hesitant to introduce a new variant of it. And Tobias, to your point, yes, with 2 different entry points in the same package, an import and a require would have 2 different instances. The thing that gets particularly confusing here too is the way in which the caches work. So if you import a CommonJS module, it first gets created into the CommonJS cache and then gets reflected into the ESM cache. If you import a module, it goes directly into the ESM cache. If you require something, it goes directly into the CommonJS cache. So introducing dynamic import into this equation and modules that have a mix of both ESM and CommonJS now creates a race condition. If you require it first and then import it later, import will actually check the CommonJS cache before instantiating it and use the one that's in the CommonJS cache, if that makes sense. Alternatively, if you import it first and it creates the version in the ESM cache and then require it later, require will know nothing about the ESM cache and actually go ahead and create another instance of it. And you'll have the 2 different instances. These kinds of edge cases are, in my personal opinion, very error prone. But Jeff linked above some work that he had done that was actually quite good in documenting best practices that module authors could use to help avoid this hazard, such as, if you do want to have singletons hiding things on a global with a symbol and then sharing that instance between both the ESM and CommonJS versions of it. There's also ways in which having 2 entry points could allow for named exports for CommonJS modules by creating wrapper ESM modules. So there's like DX benefits to it as well. And I think kind of the 2 attitudes at a very high level are, hey, we already have this hazard and people already need to work around it. And it's not Node's job to be paternal on this. And we should kind of allow the good developer experience and educate people on how to avoid the hazards. And the other attitude is, this hazard is really bad and it's caused lots of problems. We want less of it, not more. And we should not enable a variant of this hazard for the purpose of better developer experience. Does that help at all, Sam?
I think it does, and actually, I think it's the singleton. Yeah, it's much worse than the singleton problem. I just posted in the channel, but I think that in the packages that are perhaps most useful to offer first-class ESM and require support with minimal disturbance there's also a good chance they're the ones that are likely to be depended on by sub-dependencies. So it's not. I can see why a single application, like a single code base, you could just say, listen, suck it up, use require or use import. Don't require and import the same dependency. That's just mindful. And that would make sense. But it doesn't fix the story of your sub-dependencies and sub-dependencies. Some of them might still be using require. Some of them might still be using import. I don't have a real opinion, but it does make me nervous. As much as I really, really want first-class ESM and require support to coexist, I understand that. I don't know if that's helpful. I don't know what the right thing to do is.
Okay, so since we're halfway through the meeting time, I think Miles is suggesting that it's actually progressed to the point where the modules team is comfortable progressing, and we'll come back to the TSC if and when it needs, more input or a decision or something like that. And I guess any TSC members whose interest been piqued can attend the ongoing modules meeting. Miles, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that seems fair. And if anyone wants to just even have some one-to-one time, I'm happy to just chat through it. I myself, like to be very blunt, I've been trying to be kind of as even keel about this. I have been pretty adamant that we should not allow the hazard, but honestly am potentially erring towards allowing it based on where the conditional export proposal is. So if anyone has questions, just reach out and let me know.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on to the other issues which were tagged for the agenda. The first one is FSAdd missed FSWatcher prototype start deprecation. I know that, Rich, you'd made some comments. Do you want to intro that one?
I'm kind of in a bad place to just be kind of talking, but I think you can probably read my comment that's in the issue tracker. I hope it's relatively up to date. I haven't actually checked, unfortunately.
Okay, let me open it up and I can read that. There has been discussion since then. I guess Lucas summarized it as, 4 people had chimed in as this doesn't need a formal deprecation, although won't fight it either. One saying,
I have something to add, which might be in there already. I'm pretty sure the removal landed in 13.0, and this deprecation did not. So I think we're pretty well set on we're not going to land this path. I would prefer to have James involved in that conversation, though. He, last I checked, was the only person who felt that there should be a deprecation, but he seemed flexible on that.
So it's already been removed?
That is my understanding. I believe it landed in 13.0.0. You can check the change log, I suppose. I would be doing that if I weren't. I'm in an airport. I have spotty Wi-Fi, which actually I should probably turn off my video. So yeah. So I'm gonna probably Anyway, I'm having trouble loading pages. So
Okay, I don't quite understand how you can deprecate something that was already removed, but the other comment that I think is worth bringing up is that Anna mentioned that, her suggestion was that in this kind of situation, her preference would be actually just stubbing out. Like if we can make something a stub and a no-op versus removing it, we should probably just do that, because it's going to be less work than runtime deprecating, or it'll be less work than runtime deprecating. It doesn't hurt anything, and in terms of maintenance, it's really not much to just leave an empty stub that's doing nothing there going forward. And that definitely seems like a reasonable approach to me. And so the question is, is that something that there's consensus on? And if so, we would want to document it. If not, I guess obviously not.
I mean, I think it's a sensible approach, but I don't know that we necessarily need to document it. If Anna were on, I guess we'd ask her feelings. I do think that this particular issue can be kicked back to the issue tracker, but I should stop talking and let other people say something if they have anything to say about it.
Okay, so unless anybody speaks up, I think I'd agree. Let's kick it back to the issue tracker.
Yeah, the urgency with it was the 13.0 release coming out. It already that ship has sailed, so we got to deal with the situation we have, and
Sure.
It's no longer a race against time, so we can move on to something else.
Okay, and so I'll remove the TSC agenda tag from it. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which is basically the issue tracking the progress on Python 3. Let me double check here. But I don't think we have Klaus this week. I know, Sam, you've been keeping a close eye on that. Sam, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm futzing around. I talked to Chris. I had a good talk with Christian yesterday. There's an ongoing problem with Node.js on with OS X Catalina, some Mac weirdness / bug, but that's not directly related to the Python. It's just in the Python code. The Python situation seems to be okay. The first step, that Python 2 is still preferred in Node.js build and in Node.js. However, if it's not present, Python 3 will be used. So that's the situation of the various, like Node.js, NPM, and Node's build process itself right now. The expected situation, I'm pretty sure that's the situation everywhere. We're running Python 3 tests in Travis, so Travis does Python 3. Everything else in our CI, since we do have Python 2 right now, should be doing Python 2. It's possible, as new machines come out, they might only have Python 3, so we'll see that. So the situation is like step 1 is good. I think we're right now we're in a wait and see phase. So we should be keeping our eyes out for any issues reported in the community or any experience anybody hears on the street or whatever hallways of issues. If there are issues, then we can fix them. If there aren't, probably in another month or two, we'll consider making the switch so that Python 3 is preferred over Python 2 if it exists. But we're not in a super hurry to do that, and that is the next step. So as it is now, we're in pretty good shape in summary.
Yeah, I guess one question would be, does it still make sense to be on the TSC agenda?
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does. It's a good point. Please take it off.
Everybody comfortable with that, or any objections?
No objection. Just one quick clarifying comment. So we've got, I guess, just over 2 months before the 2.7 end of life. Is there a plan to coordinate the timing and everything around that end of life, Sam, or are we kind of going to work independent?
There is not a plan to coordinate. There isn't a plan to not coordinate either. It hasn't really been discussed. I think Christian, hopefully he won't take it amiss that I'm speaking for him, but I suspect that he would be pushing very strongly for an its end of life, stop depending on it point of view. I personally am much more cautious. It may be end of life, but it's still there and it's going to be there for a long time. So I would base our transition not so much on what the Python does as far as end of lifing it, but as what we think will be most disturbing for our community. So I don't think we have to coordinate, but I don't have really strong feelings. And if anybody does have other feelings or, is running into internal problems, please tell me. I think the main thing, which is that companies that say, okay, it's end of life, we are banning Python 2.7 in every single one of our machines and only have Python 3. Our belief is that those systems will work right now with Python 3 if you just deleted Python 2.7, which is the main goal for us.
And would we consider the transition of default from 2.7 to 3 to be a Semver major?
We don't know. There's no, the safe thing, as in all of the things, the safest thing would be to consider it Semver major. On the other hand, if new OS X or Linux distros come out in the fall or spring that don't have any Python 2, and we hear absolute radio silence, nobody makes any complaints, all those machines silently started using Python 3, everybody was fine, well, then maybe we could make the case that it's not Semver major, that it's basically unnoticeable and nobody should care.
Okay. I'll take this back to the group. Like, I would really love to see that by the time it's end of life, that the default has been changed, at least on master, because there'll be no more primary open source security releases for Python 2.7, and I think it would be a bad idea for us to have the default be, something that could potentially be unsafe on certain systems.
What group are you referring to, Miles, when you say you'll take it back to the group?
Us, I guess.
Oh, I was the people who are working on the Python 3, like on the transition story. So I guess that would be Sam and the other folks working on it.
Christian, obviously. Okay.
Yeah.
It's basically me and Christian. There's not a huge group, so I mean we're all almost.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah, there's not some giant team. So again, I don't have. I sympathize with. It's reasonable. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't have any problem switching master to preferring 13.
I think the only risk there is that we may not be well testing the default, right? Because we haven't necessarily done anything to get a lot of Python 3 only machines into the CI.
And I think that's
not the right answer, just saying that's the one thing.
And I think that would be a good reason to start pushing for it, at least to land it on master. And I think, Sam, we could land it on master as Semver major, and then discuss about landing on 13 as minor. And then potentially even if we want to backport it to 12, although I doubt that we'd want to do that during LTS. So, I think since the fallback is there on 12 and that's reasonable, fixing this on master, before the end of life date would be a good timeline, in my opinion.
I don't have any problem with that. That seems pretty reasonable. Also, pretty easy to do. I'll open an issue. I'll switch it and see how the master builds go. We do have Python 3 on a number of our systems, I think, in CI. So we'll see.
Thanks for all the hard work.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and a big call out to Christian as well, because he's really been instrumental in making sure this moved forward and doing a lot of the work.
Yeah, he absolutely has done most of the work. I've mostly done GitHub wrangling. So.
Okay, so I've removed the tag. I think I've removed the TSC tag from the issue, and we'll move on to the next one. The next one is under the Node.js admin, and this is the Collaborator Summit, which I think I've already mentioned. I think, Matteo, you had added this to the agenda. I'm thinking we can probably remove unless you wanted something else, wanted to leave it on for some reason.
I just wanted to leave it there so that we keep giving some airtime to the fact that it's more on airtime. So there is a Collaborator Summit happening in Montreal. So book your travel, book your flights, and submit sessions.
Okay, so we'll leave it on the agenda. Anything else on that one before we move forward? No, okay. The next one is transfer Jenkins CI tool tap to JUnit into Node.js org. So I think, Sam, you tagged that. We did briefly discuss last week, but we decided to wait to see where we were at this week. You have an update?
Sorry, what's the current agenda item?
This is transfer Jenkins CI to tap to tool tap to JUnit tool had to do with the license. I think there were attempts to get a relicensed version, but there were some CI issues or whatever. And
yeah, no Python developer has volunteered to get tap to JUnit working yet. I can poke Christian, maybe he'll be keen on it, or I could add it to my ever-growing list of things I could kind of do.
I think you mentioned that you'd asked Christian last week, so I guess just seeing if he's got an interest, and then if not, maybe we can discuss it again here.
Yeah, he's been on vacation, just got back.
Okay.
I think he's more focused right now on the Node.js issue, which is breaking Catalina users, or the Catalina which is breaking Node.js users.
Okay, so why don't we leave it on the agenda to see if there's an interest there. If not, we can go back to one of the other suggestions is to ask for an exception. But it's probably worth just waiting to see if we have a better option first. Does that make sense to everybody? I'll take silence as a yes. So, okay, the next issue was related to the divergent specifier hazard number 371. We had the Q&A, so I think we've already covered that. Just to confirm, Miles, I think based on the discussion, we should also remove the agenda tag.
Yes, we can remove the agenda tag.
Okay, done. So that takes us to the section on strategic initiatives. I do want to reserve about 10 minutes. May not need quite that much for a private section though. So maybe let's limit this to specific strategic initiatives where people have something that they'd like to call out.
I don't have a specific update for this Streams initiative, but we will be having, or at least there's plans to have a session or sessions at the Collaborator Summit.
Okay.
I can say something about V8.
Yep.
So I'm working on the integration of V8 7.9 into master, and almost everything is fine now. We just have a problem on macOS, and it's probably again a compiler bug in Xcode 8. So I think, Miles, you helped us last time with that, or some colleague of you helped us.
Yes, so we did the patch to make it compatible with the older Xcode, but that was meant to be kind of a Band-Aid awaiting the machines getting updated. Michael, is there any progress being done on that front?
So Sam is helping, is working with our interns on that. There is a fair amount of complication though, so I don't think it's going to be, it's not reasonable to expect it's this week or next week, or even necessarily this month. It could be, not saying it can't be, but in terms of the different things that need to happen to get a machine there, it's not clear that it will be within that kind of time period.
Is this something that I could help with on the build side?
If you can get in and can understand how ESX works, and because there's two things going on. One is at our existing infrastructure provider, when Refac had looked at it before, it sounded like we couldn't just spin up new machines, 10.14 machines, which is what we need. It might need an ESX upgrade and so forth. So Sam is starting to look at that, but you could probably get together with him and understand better, what would need to happen on that front. On the other side, we do have some machines we are ramping up at Nearform, but they're starting from scratch. So, we've got to get virtual VMware on there. And so we're doing that. May happen faster than I'm saying. I just don't want to set any expectations on that actually coming, being in place in a fast amount of time.
Okay.
So if you can get in and start helping install VMware and different things, maybe you can help speed that up.
Okay. Sounds like there's a pattern today. Sam and I need to talk about a few things.
Sounds good.
Okay, anyway, it's not urgent. V8 7.9 will not be stable this month. I also have something to say about Canary. So I had to do a few patches to our zip files to make it work. And just as a heads up, V8 removed support for embedded built-ins, which I think we didn't use anyway, but it's a way to embed JavaScript code into the V8 binary. It was used by Chromium, but I don't know if Node.js embedders use it, like Electron. And they also removed the possibility to build V8 without snapshot. And I already opened the pull request. I think it was merged to remove that option from our configure script. And that's it.
So on that front, do you think we need to be publicizing that, or is there something we should do? Like
it's difficult to say. I don't know if anyone did use this -- without snapshot build. I cannot say.
Right. I mean, I guess that we really have no choice anyway, right? Like that's in, when you say Canary, that's post 7.9. Is that like V8.8 or?
That will be V8 8.0, yes.
Right, okay. So that'll come in Node.js 14. And I guess the same goes for the use of embedded built-ins, right?
Yes.
Is there an easy way to tell that? Like if embedders are using that? Is it worth asking? Like, I don't know, Miles, if there's anybody you could talk to at Google to get an assessment of, do they think anybody would have used that in building their add-on modules?
Michael, why don't you follow up with me? I just need to be ramped up on it one more time. Just let me know what you'd like me to find, and I can ping the V8 team and bring the right people in to comment.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just any other updates? Okay. So with that, I'll say we'll end the public part of our session. And if everybody can just stick around for a short private section. I'm going to stop the stream.